Hello and welcome to The Elder's Insight, an exciting new podcast series presented by Hepworth & Associates, your source for advocacy, advisory, and planning insights for seniors, pre-seniors, and their caring families. So let's get started with the show on location today in Toronto.
Welcome back to another episode of The Elder's Insight, and thank you for joining us again. My name is Gary Hepworth, and I'm your host for this edition of The Elder's Insight, and we are live today from Toronto, Canada, where spring is hopefully on its way. We continue to thank you for all the positive responses that we continue to get for the Elder's Insight series, and it's a good thing because we love doing it. We know that not everyone can make it out to our various seminars and workshops, so the Elder's Insight series comes right to your home so you don't miss a thing. So let's go on with today's lifestyle episode, which is entitled, Okay, I'm All Packed, Where To? And this subject has been one that our listeners who've been asking us about for a long time now, travel. Whether you're a pre-retiree getting your bucket list in order or a seasoned retiree traveler who is deciding on their next escape, you're going to find today's episode really interesting and helpful. As seniors, we've learned our time to travel. So if your days of having to submit a vacation request for approval are over, now is your time to explore. A survey done in 2017 found travel is at the top of the bucket list for more than 80% of baby boomers. So it's clearly on most of our collective minds, no matter if you've never really explored before or whether you're a seasoned globetrotter. This all said, there's more to packing a bag and jumping on the next flight. Like everything today, the process and considerations to get to your destination can be a bit intimidating unless you've got some valuable insight, Elder's Insight. So we're going to talk to someone today who's my favorite expert when it comes to travel. He's the guy to discuss where to go, what to do, what to bring, and what to consider, and a whole lot more of to-dos and don't-dos. And his name is Peter Wong. Little about our guest today. Peter is the president of Cruise Holidays Luxury Travel Boutique right here in Toronto. After a long career in international banking and business, Peter decided to try his hand at building a small business. It was a perfect link of his own love for travel with serving clients who like having a smile on their faces. And to his credit, the small business turned into a very popular specialty cruise travel agency specializing in river and ocean cruises, but also in custom vacations, luxury resorts and hotels, tours, and specialty travel. Of particular interest is to the extent Peter has specialized his services around pre-seniors and seniors, and the kind of things that we in our demographic really value in terms of our value for dollar. So bottom line, Peter is a passionate and respected advocate for the needs of older adults, and we're thrilled to have him here today on the Elder's Insight. Peter, welcome to the Elder's Insight.
Well, thank you very much, Gary, and it's a real pleasure to be here on Elder's Insight. And what a great way to get important and relevant information out to your audience, especially about travel, a subject that I'm really, really passionate about.
Good. So let's start out with the first question that most people have. So once they've decided they've got the travel bug, they want to get away, okay, where should we go? How do you help people decide where they should travel?
Well, where you want to go is often just the beginning of the process, but that is sometimes the most agonizing decision to make. We have to probe our clients about their past travel experiences, their hobbies, their activities, their abilities, and even minute things like their dietary preferences. Are you interested in culture, art, and music? Are you physically active, or do you have mobility restrictions? Are you a beach person, or do you prefer more temperate climates? Are you interested in adventure travel, or do you prefer traveling with all the modern conveniences while touring the great cities of the world? We have clients who enjoy going local, which means traveling to remote countries and experiencing the food, the culture, and the economy at a local level. Others enjoy tours with expert local guides to educate them about the culture, history, and local customs. Others prefer to travel the world in the lap of luxury.
So you touched on this about cost. So I guess people can spend a whole range of money because you mentioned luxury too. So if you think of Europe, Hawaii, the Caribbean, I know these are popular places to go, but what should people be budgeting? What's a ballpark number?
Yeah, well, to answer that question, we like to group travel into four main cost categories. There's budget, contemporary, luxury, and ultra luxury. There are travel options at each budget level for every type of travel, whether it's adventure travel, guided tours, all-inclusive resorts, or cruises. But let's talk about each of these categories, and that'll give you a feel for how much you might spend. In budget vacations, they usually start around $1,000 per person. And these are pretty basic and are lower in cost for a number of reasons. It could be that the resorts are older or in a less popular location. Perhaps the amenities or the beaches aren't the best in the area. Accommodations, food, and transportation may be the very basic types. However, if you're looking just to get away from the cold, which a lot of people are, this might be suitable for you. You might just want to lie on a beach. I must warn you, though, that there are risks with budget travel in the budget travel market. Customer service is minimal, so if there is an issue or a problem on your trip, you're usually on your own. Even if you book through an agent, there's often little that we can do to help you with these packages because they're priced for mass market sales, and suppliers are more interested in volume than responding to individual concerns. But if you're on a tight budget, this might be an option for you. The next category up is we call the contemporary category, and it's slightly more expensive, but with better accommodations, food and transportation, and also a little better customer service. So if something does go wrong on your trip, you may get somebody to help you or some response from the supplier. These trips are generally in the $2,000 to $3,000 per person. Now, the luxury travel category, which everybody loves to travel, features even better accommodations, food and transportation, and also extra amenities such as smaller tour groups, top-notch tour guides, alcohol and beverage packages, transfers to and from the airport, excursions, just to mention a few. These trips are generally between $3,000 per person and $5,000 per person. In this category, service and personal attention is valued. And if there are any complaints by the clients, we can usually talk to the supplier about either fixing the issue while you're on your trip or getting some sort of compensation for you when you return. Now, ultra luxury offers the best of everything in travel and can cost you as much as you want. We've had clients book trips that cost over $20,000 to $30,000 per person. These trips are either very remote or very exclusive or to very exotic destinations and include the best accommodations, the best transportation, and the best food available. So your budget really depends on where you want to go, how you want to travel, and where you want to stay. There are options for all types of travel to all the destinations in the world, from budget to ultra luxury. I want to stress it's important in the travel industry to look for value over price, because when it comes to a budget, you want the best value, not necessarily the cheapest price. And there's a huge difference here, especially in the travel market.
Good, that's very helpful. So one of your specialties is cruises. And when you think of cruises, you think of the big ship cruise to the Caribbean or Alaska. But there's also the river cruises in Europe, mostly, I understand. So what are the big differences between the classic big ship cruise and the riverboat cruises?
Well, first of all, cruises are generally one of the best values in the travel industry, especially for the older demographic. Your accommodation, meals, and entertainment are almost always included in the price, so you don't have to pay anything extra when you get on board. You can see multiple destinations, packing and unpacking only once. You don't have to waste valuable vacation time checking in and out of hotels, waiting for or sitting on buses, trains, or airplanes to travel from one destination to another. Cruises are also perhaps the safest way to travel, as cruise lines are very strict about who they allow on board compared to hotels or resorts, which are often easily accessible to the public. And cruise lines offer very consistent product and offer many itineraries all over the world. As you mentioned, one of the more popular trends in the cruise industry is river cruising, River cruises are mainly based on the great rivers in Europe, but there are also river cruises in Asia and even in Africa as well. Many of the great cities in Europe were established along the main rivers such as the Danube, the Rhine, and the Rhone. The old historic parts of these cities are centered around the old port districts, and river cruise ships take advantage of this by sailing down these rivers from city to city, while the clients can watch the scenery go by from the deck or panoramic restaurants or even their balcony staterooms. It's such a relaxing way to tour Europe compared to the traditional bus. Now, the main difference between river cruises and ocean cruises is that river cruise ships are smaller, about 100 passengers, versus ocean ships that often range from 500 to 5,000 passengers. This makes the experience much more intimate and personalized. River cruises tend to dock in the middle of the city centers, which makes embarkation, disembarkation quite easy. River cruises usually include more in the price than ocean cruises. For example, most river cruises include beer and wine for lunch and dinner, and shore excursions in every port. And all this is included in the price, where with ocean cruises, these amenities are a la carte or extra. Since rivers are generally less turbulent than oceans, the risk of motion sickness is very minimal. Although the incidence of motion sickness on ocean cruises is small these days, given new stabilization technology, there is still a perceived fear of motion sickness that is easier to overcome on a river cruise than on an ocean cruise. River cruises are usually in the contemporary to luxury to ultra luxury category, whereas ocean cruises do offer a broader range from budget all the way up to the ultra luxury categories. While there are definite advantages to river cruises, there are advantages to ocean cruises as well. Because ocean cruises must accommodate more people, they offer more options in dining, entertainment, and activities. Ocean cruises have more space, so the common areas are larger than on river cruises. And they offer facilities such as spas, fitness centers, shopping areas, children's areas, and swimming pools and other activities. Ocean cruises are more accessible with people with mobility issues than river cruises. And ocean cruises offer more geographic destinations and a broader range of itineraries, as they're not restricted to rivers. The bottom line is that both types of cruises are very popular these days, and both offer great value.
Safety and security come to mind in the world today. I think you mentioned accessibility. So a client who has mobility issues, are they able to actually take a river cruise? Like, can river boats take people in wheelchairs, for example, or walkers?
Let me talk about safety and accessibility, but I'd like to talk about one risk that is often overlooked first, and that is cancellation medical emergency risks. Many people will invest in an expensive vacation months, if not years in advance. However, what happens if there's a medical incident before they depart, or what happens if something happens while they're on the trip? If they don't have proper insurance coverage, they may lose their investment. They may even incur onerous additional expenses if the medical emergency occurs outside of the province. So please, we encourage our clients to factor in travel insurance into the budget for your vacation. That's all I'll say about travel insurance, because that's a complicated topic and requires a discussion on its own. And if anybody has any questions, please contact us. In regard to personal safety, there are a number of tips we offer our clients. First is to consider cruises as an option. It's one of the safest ways to travel. They're very strict about who's on the ship. They have records of everybody who works on the ship. And so it's probably one of the safest environments that you can experience while you're traveling. The second is to check the Government of Canada Travel Advisory website. This is where you'll find the most up-to-date information about any problems in a country that the government of Canada wants to alert travelers to. Don't travel to countries where there are travel advisories if you can avoid it. However, understand that travel advisories may only apply to certain parts of the country. Take Mexico, for example. There's been a rise in drug-related crime in certain parts of the country, but for the most part, resorts and tourist areas in Mexico are quite safe. So understand what the travel advisory says, read it carefully, and take your tips from there. The third tip is to travel on guided tours or in groups, especially in countries with which you're not familiar. There is truth in the saying that there's safety in numbers, and so whenever you're in unfamiliar territory, make sure you're not traveling alone. The fourth is to know the laws and the customs of the countries that you are traveling to. This is very important when you're traveling to non-Western countries. Laws can be very different from Canada and North America, and you don't want any misunderstanding while you're traveling.
I guess
Finally,
cannabis comes to mind.
yes, exactly. That would be a major faux pas in many countries. So finally, be aware of your surroundings always. As a tourist, you're always a target. So be aware and use common sense. And make copies of your travel documents and have them someplace safe in case you lose yours while you're traveling. In regard to accessibility, as you know, as we age, many of us will encounter mobility issues. This can restrict the type of travel that you can do, but it shouldn't stop you from traveling. We have a son who uses a wheelchair, and we have traveled extensively with him and understand the needs of people with mobility restrictions. Extra planning and contingency plans are especially important. We always have a plan B and a plan C. We understand what it's like to have our wheelchair accessible taxi not show up, or when there's an elevator that's out of order, or when an accessible hotel is not really accessible. Accessibility has improved in Western countries and indeed all over the world, but there are still obstacles that have to be overcome, especially when you're traveling to new destinations. So extra planning and contingency are crucial. In regard to river cruises, you're absolutely right. They're not the most accessible mode of transportation. We've had people in wheelchairs travel on river cruises, but the issue is that the elevator does not go all the way up to the top deck. So you're missing out on some of the best parts of a river cruise. On the other hand, ocean cruises are totally accessible. They were the first to accommodate people with wheelchairs, and they've just been improving decade over decade.
So when I've been on cruise ships, I may have got sick or seasick. There's generally a doctor on board and a whole medical unit there. What happens if someone has a medical emergency or some of the health condition while they're on a river cruise?
Usually on a river cruise, they'll pull over to the shore and call an ambulance. So it's quite safe. They don't have medical staff on river cruises, but because they're within hours of a major city, it's easy to get an ambulance to the ship or take the ship to a place where the ambulance can meet you. Whereas if you're on a cruise ship in the middle of the Caribbean, the only way to evacuate is by air ambulance.
Do's and don'ts. So for the newer traveler who hasn't been around the world much, what tips do you have for someone who's fairly new to the travel bug?
I would say the very first do item is to use a TICO-registered travel agent. Now, TICO is the Travel Industry Council of Ontario, and it is the consumer protection agency for travelers from Ontario and regulates Ontario travel agencies. TICO is a complaint resolution body, so that if you have any kind of service issue with a travel agent, you can arbitrate, they can arbitrate a resolution for you. TICO also protects Ontario travelers if a supplier fails to provide the contracted service. So when a tour company goes bankrupt in the middle of your vacation, TICO is there to help you get back to Canada and in some cases may compensate you for your losses. There are no fees to the consumer for TICO benefits, as TICO is funded by the travel industry. The second tip is travel agents do not cost you any more than booking direct with a supplier. The supplier has published fares, and if you book directly with them, they keep the profit for themselves. If you book through a travel agent, the supplier pays that travel agent a commission. But in addition to that, a travel agent can compare travel options between many different suppliers and help to explain the fine print. Whereas if you talk to a travel supplier, they're only interested in selling their particular product, which may not be the best fit for you. There's a lot of information on the internet, and it's often difficult to understand the details. A travel agent can help you there. Also, if you book direct, you're essentially on your own if something happens during your trip. If you use a travel agent, that travel agent can help you during your trip or after your trip if there is a service issue. We have more clout than you do with the suppliers and can often get concessions or compensation or results that our clients would not be able to get on their own. And make sure you have adequate travel insurance. Medical expenses out of province can be devastating and financially crippling. A heart attack in the U.S. can cost you over $100,000. Air ambulances alone can cost tens of thousands of dollars. So, it's worth the investment, especially as we age, to get travel insurance. Another do or don't is not to pay for your trip until you have everything in writing and fully understand what you're getting. Understand the deposit conditions and when the final payment is due. Most trips have cancellation fees, so be sure you understand those terms. Double and triple check your flight details. Ensure your name on the flights and other itineraries match your passport. That's so important these days. And also call your travel agent before you travel and go through your itinerary with them to make sure everything is in order. The more planning you do before your trip, the more relaxing your trip will be.
There you go. My favorite word, planning. There you go. Thank you for emphasizing the travel insurance topic, because I know it's an important topic. So if you had a classroom of us potential travelers in a room right now, and is there one specific piece of advice you'd give us? What do you wish more people knew before they actually traveled?
Well, my top bit of advice is more of a philosophy than advice. My favorite travel quote is from Hans Christian Andersen, and he said, "To travel is to live." And I believe that to be so true. I feel most alive when I travel. I learn the most when I travel. I feel that I live life to the fullest when I travel. Travel is exciting. It shouldn't be intimidating. Travel opens your eyes, your mind, and your soul. Enjoy your journeys, because experience are so much more valuable than things. There are some amazing places to experience outside our communities, and the more you experience, the more you have lived. Travel to the most distant and remote destinations while you can. Leave the easier trips for when you get older. Keep in mind that the major reason that people stop traveling is health and inability to purchase travel insurance. Travel within your budget, but travel well. Remember that you may not get a chance to go back to a destination, so take advantage of your time there.
Peter, that's been great. Peter, fascinating chat indeed. Big thanks to you on behalf of our listeners and yours truly. Our whole objective here on the Elders Insight is to provide the kind of peace of mind that comes from trusted information. So it's terrific to be getting it from a seasoned pro like yourself today.
Well, thanks, Gary. It was a pleasure talking with you, and thanks to your listeners. I'd love to come back again, perhaps to talk about travel insurance or another travel-related topic, but it's been great, and thank you again.
We might just take you up on that. Well, folks, that's been a wrap for today's videocast, and we thank you all for joining us, and we thank our guest, Peter Wong, for taking the time out of his busy schedule. So if you'd like to reach out to Peter and the fine folks at Cruise Holidays Luxury Travel Boutique, just drop us a line and we'll get you connected right away. So we enjoy your comments, keep them coming. And stay tuned for more video casts on the Elders Insight so that we all age well.
Thanks for joining us today on the Elders Insight. We hope you found this podcast helpful, informative, interesting, and most of all, fun. We hope you can join us for our future podcasts as we continue to be your source for advocacy, advisory, and planning insights for seniors, pre-seniors, and their caring families. A big thanks to Hepworth and Associates team, and we look forward to seeing you the very next time here on the Elders Insight.